Wednesday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand, happy to be back for another day. Hope you guys are having a great day out there today. Excellent show coming up. Randy Johnson from the Star Tribune will join me here in just a few minutes. Got a lot to talk about with Randy. Busy time of the year. We will talk Gophers football. They open spring practice later this week, and they have their pro day today. All of their NFL prospects will be on display for NFL scouts, GMs, personnel people, things like that. So we'll talk about those guys. We'll talk about spring practice, the quarterback competition this season. Max Brosmer, obviously, one and done here for the 1 year, a good year at that. But now moving on to a different quarterback. And just they're in a spot where they're hoping to build on last season. We'll see if they're able to do that. Gophers men's hockey awaiting their fate in the NCAA tournament. Selection show Sunday. Randy and I will get into that, as well as other Minnesota teams in the mix right now. And Gophers wrestling. They begin competition on Thursday at the NCAA meet. Gable Stevenson going for another NCAA title at heavyweight, trying to cement his legacy among the all-time great heavyweights in college wrestling history. So, like I said, a lot to get to with Randy. He's got a lot going on his plate, but happy to catch up with him on all of those things. We've got an Aaron Rodgers sort of update for you Vikings fans out there, and I know there's a lot of you, so we'll get to that here in a little bit. A full slate of games coming up as well. First, though, what I missed. Got kind of not a rant, but a curious start to today's show, talking about third catchers. Yes, third catchers. It's a very obtuse thing. I get it. It's kind of niche. Third catchers. The Twins have a little bit of a history with third catchers. Ron Gardenhire, for a lot of his tenure as Twins manager, a successful tenure. Let's just say that, successful tenure. They did win 6 AL Central titles in 9 seasons between 2002 and 2010. Gardy was a good manager. He had a soft spot, though, for third catchers. He loved this idea of carrying 3 catchers because of the versatility it gave you, this theoretical versatility. Oh man, if you have 3 catchers, think of what you can do. You can start one of them at DH, you can put one of them at catcher, or you can put one at catcher and if another one plays first base. And then if you got a third guy, man, what if you had to pinch hit later or pinch run or something like that, and then you could bring the other guy in? You got 3 catchers, right? 3 catchers, these like dream scenarios, like these cases that come up maybe like 1 out of every 100 games where you might want a third catcher. Maybe it's more than that. I don't know. It's not very often, though, that you want 3 catchers in a game, because usually if your guy is a third catcher, he's not a great catcher, and your 3 catchers probably aren't your 3 best hitters. They're certainly not your 3 fastest players, things like that. But Gardy loved the idea of 3 catchers. I believe it was like the early 2013, somewhere in there, they had Joe Mauer, Ryan Domit, and Chris Herman. That was the most recent that I can remember them carrying the 3 catchers, but he loved that versatility. Even when he went to Detroit as the manager, Gardy loved having 3 catchers. This was from 2018, an MLB.com story. Gardy had referenced that 2013 season, and he said, he was talking about the possibility of carrying 3 catchers in Detroit. If you have that luxury, it's really nice. I've had that before. That's a really nice luxury to have. Goes on to say, we have 2 big, strong catchers. That's always a good thing. He's talking about one of his catchers. He can move around a little bit. I think starter James McCann probably could too, play some first base. So maybe against a tough lefty, you could get more righties in the lineup. That's where it helps, having a guy somewhere on the team that can be a third catcher. What does this have to do with the 2025 Minnesota Twins? It sounds like manager Rocco Baldelli is also a third catcher enthusiast. He has the third catcher virus. This from a Phil Miller story, StarTribune.com. A good piece, by the way. Taking a look at a couple of the guys that are maybe fighting for roster spots. Iverson Castellano, and Mickey Gasper. We're going to focus on Mickey Gasper because he is trying to make the team as a utility player. He has the ability to play catcher. He did that a couple times this week, including yesterday. He caught Joan Duran in yesterday's game. They're trying to give him some innings at catcher to see if he could be that third catcher. Obviously, they still have Ryan Jeffers on the roster, and then, of course, they still have Christian Vasquez. Those guys will get the bulk of the innings this season. I know they maybe tried to look at trades of Vasquez in the offseason, didn't work out. Jeffers and Vasquez are going to play 95, I think maybe even more than that, % of the innings at catcher if they are healthy. However, Mickey Gasper does have the ability to play catcher. He's done it in the minor leagues for quite a bit. And here's Rocco Baldelli talking about the possibility of the flexibility you get from having a third catcher, especially one like Gasper who can hit. He can hit. We'll grant him that. He says he is actually someone that can go behind the plate and help you win a game. It gives you tremendous ability to make changes, be an even more versatile club. For instance, quote, it allows us to pinch run for our catchers when we're down, and you can put him in a game for an inning or 2 or 3 and not worry about him. He'll be prepared. He'll work hard. Man, it's a small thing. If Gasper makes the roster just because he's a good hitter and because he's got versatility, that's fine. I just kind of laugh at this idea of how great it is to have a third catcher. There's like very few scenarios that are ever going to come up in a game that you're trying to win when you want to have a third catcher, where that's just going to be the difference between winning or losing. Where, man, if you're in a situation where you got to pinch run for somebody, that's a close game. That's probably a 1-run game. Do you really want your third catcher then coming into the game? I think you're losing more than you're gaining there. Anything you gain by pinch running, you're losing by having a guy in there who maybe isn't the strongest defensive catcher, things like that. So anyway, this is like an off-center rant. It's kind of a small rant, but when I read this the other day, I was like, oh man, Rocco's got the third catcher virus. I thought we got rid of that when Gardy left. I thought that had been eradicated. I guess there's no vaccine for it. You can't be vaccinated against it. It's hung around longer than I thought. So there you go. The Twins, Rocco Baldelli, still got that third catcher fever. We'll see if it is gone before the end of the spring. In other news this morning, multiple reports suggesting the Vikings have moved on from any pursuit of Aaron Rodgers at this time. It's been discussed. We've talked about it. It's not like this is something we have completely made up out of thin air. The Vikings were talking about this. Ben Gessling from the Star Tribune has reported this has been a point of discussion. National reports, though, suggesting the Vikings are now turning their attention to a different veteran-style backup, clearly establishing J.J. McCarthy as the number 1 quarterback going into the year. One report even suggesting that the Vikings have had to fend off multiple trade calls about McCarthy as the Rodgers stuff has percolated. So there you have it. Again, still fluid. Until something happens, things are fluid. Until we get a definitive answer on, okay, Rodgers has signed someone else. Maybe he signs with the Steelers today now that he's got clarity. Maybe that happens. Maybe he retires. If he retires, then there's always the possibility that he comes back. But if you look at it right now, if you look at it just on its face, it looks like this story can go away at least for a while. And again, if he signs somewhere else, if the Vikings sign somebody else, then it becomes moot. Then it becomes just, okay, that was a week of our lives that we'll never get back, but nothing ever came of it, things like that. I think this is the right idea. There's like a tiny piece of me that's intrigued by it, but there's just so much negative that could go wrong with the addition of Aaron Rodgers. There's so much intrigue I have with J.J. McCarthy. I think he can be a very good quarterback. You've got to find out where he's at some point. I think they liked what they saw before he got hurt last season, so now is the time. They've put this out there right now. They're ready to get this into a good spot. They're ready to have they're ready to have their time. They're ready to have their window. Let's not mess this up. So if that's where they're headed, if that's where the reporting is telling us that we're headed, I am on board with that, and hopefully we can just forget any of this ever happened.
Open a smart checking account at Royal Credit Union to get no monthly fees, no minimum balance, and a $250 bonus. See details at rcu.org/checking bonus. No minimum balance required to obtain bonus. Offer ends 5/31/25. Insured by NCUA.
let's bring in the Star Tribune's Randy Johnson today to talk about what even a growing list. As I talked to you beforehand, there was two things I already wanted to talk to you about, but now we're going to add Gophers wrestling to Gophers hockey and Gophers football. It must be March, Randy.
It is definitely March. You feel like you're just trying to keep your head above water, catch up, get as much done as you can, and it's fun time though too. It's always enjoy this time of year when all the sports collides. It was always stressful on the desk and everything when you're editing, and it is stressful at the games too when you're trying to meet those deadlines. But it's just fun stuff to cover.
Gopher football has a couple notable things this week, so let's start there. The pro day is Wednesday, and then first day of spring practice is Thursday. The pro day has become kind of a bigger deal for them, as really maybe since PJ Fleck's arrival. Even before that, they certainly had draft picks, but they've had a pretty decent run here of guys drafted. If not always the first day, only the one first rounder, but a bunch of second round picks lately. Like the program is at a certain level now where the pro day maybe matters more than it ever did.
Yeah, definitely. They're having a lot more guys participating in it, not just guys that are going to be drafted, but you'll see some guys that are on the fringe that if they're not drafted, they'll get a good look and probably sign on as a free agent, get into a camp, at least a rookie camp, and then hopefully a training camp. But you're going to see guys like Cody Lindenberg. You'll probably see him do more at this Gophers pro day than he was able to do at the scouting combine because of he was recovering from a surgery. You get a look at Max Brosmer, things like that. You get to look at those defensive ends, Ja Joyner, Danny Strigow. It's a nice little. It's become a lot more of an event here, where you'll have all 32 NFL teams represented there. And I can go years back when they were early on in Fleck's tenure here. There might have been only a handful a couple times. So they've really upped the talent level that they're getting here.
Does Max Brosmer have pro potential? I remember they kind of talked about that last year, and obviously you want to sell the program, you want to push those guys forward, but is he somebody that will potentially get a look on somebody's roster in this, in the spring and summer?
Yeah, I think there's a chance that happens. I think he's a guy that obviously he knows how to run an offense. He's got a lot of experience. He's a pretty poised type of quarterback, doesn't make a lot of mistakes, a decent game manager type of situation. And, people will take a look at him. He's if you're efficient and not making a lot of mistakes, you'll get a look.
Who then is who are the signature players then at this year's pro day?
Well, Ariante Ursary, the offensive tackle, who, there's a chance he goes in the first round. He's got, pretty much, very high ranks by Pro Football Focus, where, he just didn't get beat this year. And, he's somebody that if he's not first round, he's going to be early second, I would think.
So from there, they will quickly shift attention to 2025 squad and spring practice. Plenty to sort out there. Obviously, we just talked about Max Brosmer. He was the starter last year. He played a ton. Quarterback will be a question, at least something to sort out this year. What else are we looking for during these early stages of spring ball?
Well, I think one of them you're going to look at wide receiver. What develops there with Daniel Jackson being leaving, and then Elijah Spencer, who came on really strong in the bowl game. Both those guys have exhausted their eligibility. Is a Lamecki Brocken going to step up, that type of thing. Offensive line, you got to replace 4 starters. That's not going to be easy, but they brought some transfers in. We'll see what happens there. That's going to be nothing's going to necessarily be won in the spring. They'll get themselves in position to. Okay, we'll see what they can do in training camp. Defensive side of the ball, you lose a linebacker like Cody Lindenberg. That'll be tough to replace. Lose Justin Walling, the secondary. That won't be easy. So they have some spots that both specialists too. Dragan Kesic and then Mark Crawford, the kicker and the punter. So it's there's plenty to be done in the spring, and then they're also putting in a new defensive coordinator in Danny Collins, who got the promotion after Corey Heatherman left after only one season. There's just a lot of things going on with that team right now.
quarterback depth chart going into the spring, where would you put that?
I would put it Drake Lindsey, QB1. I would probably put the transfer from Georgia Tech, Zach Pyron, probably the backup. We'll see how that shakes out. If somebody else like the Virginia Tech transfer from a couple years ago, Whitkey, how he shakes out. How the Jackson Collick, the true freshman who early enrolled, how he looks. But I think it's Lindsey's job to lose. They won't say that. It's going to be a competition up until the opener. But he's got the inside track, and he's done a good job. He's already following the Max Rosemer playbook. He had a bunch of the players down for a skills camp over spring break. So.
Is that down in Arkansas? That's where he's from, right?
Yeah, it wasn't in Arkansas. I'm trying to remember where exactly it was.
Okay.
But off the top of my head, I forget that. But yeah, he's basically running Max's playbook, which he was attached to the hip with Max. So he was trying to learn a lot from him.
Do we, generally speaking, where would you put their outlook for next year? I don't really. Anytime you got to replace a quarterback, there's questions that I think they had at least what you could think of as a stabilizing year last year. Are they optimistic? I mean, look, PJ Fleck's always going to be optimistic. But you're like, where is the realistic kind of like range for this year's team going into next year?
I think that it's probably around the 6.5, 7 win range. I mean, I think that's probably what a lot of people will figure they start off at. They going into last year, everybody's pretty down on them. And they rebounded pretty well. Ended up winning 7 regular season, then 8 with the bowl win. Yeah, it's the schedule is. You have a couple of really tough games, and you have Oregon and Ohio State on there. Then you have a lot of games that were like you had last year that are kind of coin flip games. But if you're a similar type of team that you were last year.
Shifting gears a little bit to the Gopher hockey team, Gophers men's hockey team. They get some time off. They've had a lot of time off, maybe not of their own choosing, but of their own making by losing early on in the Big Ten tournament. Obviously doesn't jeopardize their NCAA hopes, but an interesting kind of push-pull of they probably get some time to rest, get some time to kind of heal up whatever they need, but also you do wonder, like, staying fresh, things like that. What are we watching for this weekend, especially leading up to Selection Sunday? Yeah,
it's you don't want, they got 2 weeks in a row off, and that's not optimal at all. Bob Motzko took them down to Rochester for an inter-squad scrimmage last weekend, so they're trying to, basically give them some game type of situation. They were able to heal. Unfortunately, it's not enough time for Aaron Hughlin to come back. He's out for the NCAA tournament for the injury he suffered in that last game against Notre Dame. They're just waiting to see what happens in the other conferences and find out late Saturday night where they fit in the seedings. I still figure they're going to be in Fargo in that regional, either as the number 1 seed, the number 4 overall, or possibly the number 2 seed, the number 5 overall. This kind of depends on what happens, mainly with the Hockey East and Maine and NCHC in Western Michigan. If both those teams win their tournaments, the Gophers pretty much are assured to drop into that first number 2 seed. I could see them in Fargo against with Western Michigan being the number 1 seed there. Now, if say North Dakota, which they need to win that tournament, the NCHC Frozen Faceoff or Final Faceoff to get there, then the Gophers probably would end up as the number 1 seed and probably facing the Fighting Hawks in that first round in Fargo, if it played out that way.
I don't think that's what they want. I would say that's not what they would want, and that's
I don't know. They don't have a choice now. They're not.
No, they don't. I know they don't have a choice, but I'm just saying, like, if you're picking something, I don't think you want to play against North Dakota in North Dakota, even if they haven't been a great team this year. They can rise to the occasion. They can get up there. So that would be something to avoid. How should they feel overall about their prospects going in? I mean, it sounds like they're going to be they're going to have a very favorable seed good chance to get through to the Frozen Four, but obviously no guarantees there. But if you do, you got to feel good about the possibility, at least, given the geography of it all.
Yeah, they need to be sharp. They need to play sharper than they have recently. It was a disappointing series against Notre Dame. They're usually a reliable goalie. Liam Soulier had a couple tough goals against them in that first game, and that got haywire, and they win the second, and then just they got outplayed in the third. They just need to assert themselves more. This is a team with a lot of talent, and you need to not be held to one or two goals. I mean, to me, you have enough talent where you should be scoring more.
What about the other Minnesota teams before we shift gears? Where are they sitting going into the weekend?
Well, the interesting thing was that last weekend, because St. Thomas won its semifinal in the CCHA, that made the winner of the other semifinal, Bemidji State at Minnesota State Mankato, the winner of that game would get the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament because St. Thomas
they're not eligible.
Isn't yet eligible. So St. Thomas plays down in Mankato on Saturday, and Mankato's already wrapped up their bid to the NCAA's, and there's a chance they end up in Fargo. If I could see that being a first round matchup against the Gophers if North Dakota doesn't make it there. And then St. Thomas will be going for they can call themselves champions if they win that game, win the Mason Cup. So that's all we got from the Minnesota teams on the men's side.
Is St. Thomas eligible next year, just like they are in basketball?
Yes, there's a few little things. How do I say
formalities,
accounting type things that they got to pass through to get the official stamp. But yes, they will be eligible next year if they pass those.
The last thing you're working on, last but not least, Gophers wrestling. Gable Stevenson going for another NCAA title. That NCAA wrestling starts Thursday in Philadelphia. His prospects have to be awfully good, but then again, you never know once you get there.
Yeah, you got to win the game. You got to win the matches. You look at Dan Gable himself. Back in 1970, he was undefeated in his college career until his final match, and ended up losing to Larry Owens from Washington. And that was kind of a famous situation there back then. But no, Gable's obviously the favorite in his weight class. He's going for his third national title. He just won his fourth Big Ten title. Basically, he could cement himself as, if he wins this, he could cement himself as, if not the best, one of the best collegiate heavyweights of all time, if not the best. And there are people would put him up there if he wins this. He's a guy he'd be right up there with was Kyle Snyder, Ohio State, three-time national champ and Olympic champ also. But yeah, Gable's been very dominant this season. 14-0. All 13 of those matches by either major decision, tech fall, or pin. His last match out, he went against Greg Kirkvliet from Penn State, and he's the former Simley High School standout. They go way back to their high school days. They went against each other, and it was a big time match where Gable ended up winning 3-2 in that one. They've met twice before in the NCAAs, Gable winning both of those, like a 9-4 decision and a 8-3 decision. At the Big Ten's last a couple weeks ago, Gable beat Kirkley 10-3, a takedown in each period and a minute of riding time. It's a little different now that they've gone to 3-point takedowns in wrestling, where those points can, if you're a takedown master like Gable is, those points can add up in a hurry.
The Gophers have had great heavyweights over the years too, man, and that's something we've been very good at over the years. We remember Brock Lesnar, Cole Conrad. I'm sure I'm forgetting
Tony Nelson.
Nelson.
They've had since 2000. They've had 7 of the 24 heavyweight champs. That's the next closest was Ohio State with 5. So
who am I forgetting right after Brock Lesnar? There was a guy who won at least one after him.
Brock won one. Then Cole Conrad had 2.
That's Cole.
Tony Nelson had 2.
Okay, all right.
His were in 12 and 13. Then he he lost in the final in 14.
Okay.
Yep. So, and then with not just Gable, you got a really good 184-pounder and redshirt freshman Max McAnally, who was a Big Ten runner-up. He won against Penn State's Carter Starocci. He's a 4-time national champ and took him to overtime.
Wow.
So a very, very good match in that one. So they Max is the number 3 seed at 184. There's a past national champ from Northern Iowa who's a 2 seed, and then Starocci's the 1. So it's it's a loaded weight class. That one should be fun to watch too.
Final thought for you: it's Penn State is pretty much better than anybody else these days, right? I mean, basically they're kind of an all-star team, right?
Yeah, they've once Cale Sanderson took over, they've taken it to new heights. They've won 11 national championships. It's been there. They're going for their 4th in a row this year. They're pretty dominant. They've had years 6 national champions out of 10. So it's they'll probably be they'll probably win it. The Gophers they're ranked 5th. They had a very nice Big Ten tournament, finished 4th. They could even finish higher than that. I could see them in the top 4, if not top 3, if things go well. You're going to have to get some upsets, but if both Stevenson and McAnally wrestle up to their seeds and you're even a little bit better in Max's case, then you can get some you can get them moving up in the standings a little bit.
Garrett Lowney was the heavyweight I was trying to remember. He was not a champion, but he was a 2-time All-American.
Yep,
kind of in between Brock Lesnar and Cole Conrad. I covered a bunch of those NCAA meets back in the day, back when they were winning national championships. They won a whole bunch of them back in the day.
I won 3. So went 01, 02, and 07.
Yes, I think was it 7, 06, whatever it was in. I covered one in Albany that was pretty memorable. I think that was the one.
The one that was really interesting was the one in Iowa City.
Yes,
their first one where they didn't have anybody in the finals, but they had clinched it before the finals because they had 10 All-Americans.
Yeah, that was quite a year. They were favored going in. They struggled kind of with some of those early matches, but they came back in the wrestlebacks and did it as a team to win their first team title. Randy, great stuff on all those subjects. Appreciate it. Hope you get a little rest after this, and we'll talk to you soon.
It's fun.
Talk to you later.
Go on adrenaline. See ya.
All right, bye-bye. Great stuff from Randy. One more hockey piece before we get to the cooler. Gophers women's hockey team, of course, headed to the Frozen Four this weekend, hosting it at Ritter Arena. They will play number 1 seed Wisconsin on Friday. Opportunity for them to, pull an upset. Wisconsin's tremendous. That's just going to be a great game. We will see if they can get past that, but they were able to make it to the Frozen Four. They beat Colgate over the weekend, and now they have another chance at another NCAA title. So that is Friday at Ritter Arena. Let's finish with the cooler. Just a couple of opportunities for Minnesota teams in the next couple of games. The Wolves play the Pelicans twice. 2 straight games against the Pelicans, I think tonight and Friday. The Pelicans, one of the worst teams in the league. Again, though, they're still playing to win. They've still got guys that can play. So, they lost to the Wolves, had their 8-game win streak snapped the other day against Indiana. A tough game. They kind of coasted through the first half. Made a surge in the second half, had the lead but couldn't hold it. Obi Toppin, a couple of amazing shots towards the end. They lost that game. Got to get back on track. Got to have some business-like wins tonight and Friday to make them feel good about themselves again, to put themselves back on track to maybe get that 6th seed. Golden State won again last night. Nobody's going away right now. Everybody's locked in right now. It's not like the end of the world if they don't get, into that top 6, if they have to go into the play-in, but you increase your margins for error once you get into the play-in. If you have to go beat somebody in the first round just to be the 7 seed, or if you lose that game, have to beat somebody just to be the 8. That's not the way you want to go. That's not the route you want to take. So we will see if they're able to get that positioning where they want it, but a couple of opportunities here against New Orleans twice, a kind of a cushy piece of the schedule right now. They've more or less taken advantage of it, but had that hiccup the other day against Indiana. Similarly for the Wild, they've got Seattle tonight. Not a terrible team, but not a team that they should mess around with. They should be able to beat Seattle, play their game. A couple nights later, they play Buffalo, one of the worst teams in the East. Again, these are the times where you've got to bank wins. These are the times where you've got to bank these points. They haven't been doing that much lately. They got a much-needed win the other day against LA. Can they do it again tonight? Can they just keep being businesslike? Both of these teams just trying to get to the playoffs, get to the postseason, feel like maybe there's some momentum there. If the Wild can get Kaprizov back, if they can get Ek back, if they can get Brodin back, they would feel a lot better about their playoff chances. Can the group on the ice get there right now? Can the Wolves get a top 6 seed, not have to worry about the play-in, get a playoff opponent in the first round that they feel like they can beat? All those things at stake as we kind of come to the last 10, 15 games of the season for both teams. That will do it for me today. Plenty of good stuff coming up the rest of the week. Lavelle Eniel III, I believe, will join me on tomorrow's show, daily delivery debate style. And then Friday, expecting to have Minnesota United manager Eric Ramsey on the show. So listen up for that. Until then, I am Michael Rand. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Back at it again tomorrow.